To see you live stream land. Hi. And if you ever want to let us know that you're watching us, send me an email, robdavids@gmail.com. Let me know that you're at least working out there, and we'd be glad to know that. Okay. I want to begin today. One has to begin today because it is current events, and that's what's appropriate. Mention that today is the, if you can believe, the 10th anniversary of Sandy Hook. And when you say 10 years, that's, I mean, it's impossible. A letter was sent around this morning by a father of one of the kids who was killed. The kid was a Jewish kid, 3 years old, 10 years ago. So you know what that father is thinking about. This should have been the time for bar mitzvah. This should have been time for X, Y, and Z. So in any event, we pause to remember and we pray that something more than prayers and speeches and letters to the editor will happen so that this kind of cruelty will be less and less likely in our world. Okay, it just... I'm so tired of hearing people say, we're praying for you. Well, great. How about fixing the situation? But they're praying. Okay. When we decided to try to do a current events class, no one had any idea that the world would be so very interesting and provide so many topics. Israel, the United States. I want to say something about that. I believe, because I know you, I absolutely know you. I believe that you are doing much more than just gathering data and learning. You know, that's great. But I hope that as we go through these conversations, you will find meaningful ways for you to be involved in impacting the situations, both in the United States and in Israel. We want to do more than review the facts on the ground. We live at a time in which somebody had better do something before we end up going to hell in a handbasket. And in so many ways, I think that's where we're headed. So that's just me. So we're going to focus a lot on Israel today, if only because the coalition government is really taking shape, and where the legal changes, the societal changes, and so forth are being locked into agreements. Not that they all have passed the Knesset yet. Hi, Harvey. Not that they have passed the Knesset yet, but we are moving from campaign slogans to signed coalition agreements. And from those agreements will emerge proposed laws in front of the Knesset. So we're already into firm agreements and confront the possibility that many of these agreements will end up becoming laws. Tom Friedman, who besides being a fraternity brother of mine, is a person I've come to respect and rely upon over the years. Not that I've agreed with everything he said, but I rely upon him. He wrote an essay last week, Israel as We Know It is Gone. That's a pretty stark statement. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but Israel as we know it is gone. And what I'm trying to put before the group today is, A, is that true? B, should we care? C, unnamed, what can we do about it? But I think it's there, and those of us concerned about the real world need to be concerned. I want to bring to mind an essay, a chapter that was written by a teacher of mine who was a little bit of a friend of mine, Yehuda Kurtzer, who's president of the North American branch of the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. Yehuda Kurtzer's father was ambassador to Israel. Kurtzer himself is nothing short of really smart. And Kurtzer published an essay. I just got it in a publication from the Hartman Institute. Kurtzer wanted to make us, talking to us, the concerned Jewish community. Talking to us, Kurtzer wanted us to understand that when Israel was established, it was established by founders, most of whom were overwhelmingly committed to creating a nation state in which the values and ends of liberal society could first be firmly established, catch this, and only then be able to shape Jewish life across the globe. You understand what Kurtzer is saying here? It's really important. The founders of Israel established Israel because they were secular socialists, most of them. Established Israel so that it could embody the values and goals of liberal society, because only then would a Jewish state be worthy of helping to shape Jewish life across the globe. Have to hold on to that. When Kurtzer wants to prove his case, he refers to Megillat Ha'atzmaut, the Israeli Declaration of Independence. He quotes the opening paragraph. I don't want to say that my second book is totally devoted to the same subject. That would be self-serving. But in the Declaration of Independence, it makes clear that the goal is to establish a liberal, secular society that embodies values which will then shape the Jewish state and the Jewish world. I think that looking at Kurtzer, reading Kurtzer, reminds me that he's right. And therefore, I would be willing to say to you, you can throw things, that what is going on now in Israel is an absolute perversion of the founding vision of the state of Israel. It's worse than a perversion, worse than a distortion. It's almost like being traitorous to the founders. Wow. And if that sounds strong to you, hey, we have an agreement. We're going to talk openly, and you can attack me happily, politely, but happily.
Can you give an example?
I'm sorry, who's talking?
Susie.
Oh,
Can you give us an example of why you say that?
sure. Well, first of all, Susie, buy my book. Second of all, that was shameless also. Susie, I could say to you, for example, that in the Declaration of Independence, full equality to women was a core value. Secondly, full equality to all the inhabitants of the state of Israel, Jewish and Arab. Okay? Third, that it be a country, you have to read the book, that it would be a country that would be committed to a variety of expressions of Judaism. We could call that pluralistic expressions of Judaism, and go on. All that is in the Israeli Declaration of Independence, written by the founders.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can sell you a copy with pictures. No, okay, all right. The question that was raised immediately by all kinds of good, caring people, whether that vision was ever possible. Is it possible to have a form, what would I call it, of liberal nationalism? When we hear the word nationalism, we're not all wrapped up in liberalism. Usually let me talk about me. When I hear that so-and-so is a nationalist, I, would tend to assume that that person is to the right of center. And the founding dream of Israel was a liberal nationalism. Is it even possible? And therefore, to put it into clear language, is the Zionist dream, which I believe and assert is being cruelly perverted today, is that dream itself even possible? Or is the force of nationalism inevitably going to create the kind of situation that we have today? I'm going to take a deep breath here in the name of Rebecca Gottfried has her hand up, but also to let other people come in and viciously but politely attack me. Go ahead.
When the Declaration was written, were any of those individuals Arabs?
None.
Look, that's the problem.
That's a fair question. When Israel's Declaration of Independence was written, to my knowledge, and I'm going to stand with it, there were no Arab authors.
Well, that's the issue then, because then the Arab population is not buying into that declaration. They have no, I can't think of the word, they have no buy-in, they have no allegiance to that declaration.
That's a great comment, but I'm not going to, I want to let a few other people jump in. Steve. I don't hear you. Are you talking? I see your lips moving.
I said, I don't think that is a fair question. The whole point was the Arabs have all their countries. The Jews wanted a homeland. And while it was to be democratic and it wasn't to kick people out, the purpose was to create a homeland for Jews, and buy-in of other people who happen to live there, I don't think was part and parcel of the goal. We had no homeland, and now we're a little dot in the middle of a huge Arab world.
So what does liberal secular nationalism mean?
It mean, I'm saying that everybody who's there in our state, because it is our state and this is our values, gets treated fairly and equally with dignity. We don't discriminate. That doesn't mean that it's set up that the primary goal of establishing the state was to create a land where Arabs could be treated equally. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to give us a homeland. And if you want to live there or happen to live there, we are going to treat you much better than we're treated anywhere else in the world.
Let me just throw something in as a simple, Rebecca, as a simple example, which I think will not be inflammatory. The state of Israel operates on the Jewish calendar. Shabbos is part of the legal norm. Friday is the day of worship sacred to Arabs. It is not a national day off. However, as it happens, because Israel's crazy, Jews mostly don't work on Friday because they're getting ready for Shabbos and they go shopping. It's the biggest shopping day of the week. Nevertheless, here you have, if you will, Jewish state means Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Sukkot, we shut down. Okay, I mean, that's just a factoid, doesn't argue it. Okay, Howard.
I believe that the founders certainly accomplished wonderful things and heroic things. I don't know, is it right that like 1% of the people died in the 1948 war? So they're very heroic, but they've been basically their ideological descendants have been rejected by the population. I think the Labor Party practically barely even made it at all in this election. And then the Merit's Party has no, I don't know where they are, how many representatives they have. The people have rejected this idea. And in broad terms, I feel that there are two reasons. One is in terms of the treatment of the Arab population, the liberal secular people had some ideas that the Israeli population have rejected after sad experience. And secondly, because the economy was in the garbage can while it was being run by the socialists, and it only really became prosperous when they were went out of power. That's at least it's arguable those things might be true. I feel.
Anyone else before we move on? I think these are great comments. I think they're great comments, and they need to be raised. You can argue so many sides of it. That's why the whole question of, is this Zionist experiment even possible? Can you have a liberal nationalism in a Jewish state? And I raise that as a question. It is a question. And I don't want to keep going back to it.
Sorry for interrupting. I'm on a train, Rabbi. Sorry for being late.
Okay,
Top of my.
I'll share with you a secret that if the Israeli Declaration of Independence were put before the present Knesset and asked to adopt it, it would not pass. In other words, Donna, shh, okay? It would not pass. Many of the elements that are the liberal social values of the founders would be rejected, and Howard is saying this, it would be rejected by the Knesset. They could never get the Knesset to adopt the Declaration of Independence. I ask myself in my dark moments, of which I'm having more, whether we could even get the US Constitution passed by our Congress. And I don't even want to think about that. First of all, the things that I would reject that are in the Constitution, and other, it would be, okay, so what's the problem? Okay, Steve, you have your hand up again?
I do. One of the things that I find most disturbing is that it appears the current government really doesn't care about the diaspora Jews. And I don't think Israel would be Israel without us. And I think going forward, we're an important part of the community. And not that we should necessarily be able to tell Israel what to do, but to not have a say or to not even care about what we think is, I think, a big mistake, and I really don't understand it.
Let me just pop right in to tell a little bit of an anecdote. When Israel was established, David Ben-Gurion, of blessed memory, who was never known to be a shy, shrinking violet. I don't think revolutionaries tend to be shy, shrinking violets. In any event, Ben-Gurion believed that he was establishing the state of Israel, which would be the center of Jewish life, and every aspect of Jewish life in the diaspora would be subservient to the Jewish state. That's what he believed. Now, by the way, he did not use the word diaspora at that point. What did he use? Galut, exile. Every Jew not living in Israel is in Galut, a Golos Yidden, a Jew in the exile. Exile means you are kept away from your homeland. You are living an alien life. I remember the argument into the 70s and 80s when the leadership of Israel would insist on referring to Jews outside of Israel as living in Galut, exile. The first public challenge to that was when in Tel Aviv, the Diaspora Museum was created. Not only, it's been, by the way, it's a fabulous museum and it's been dramatically upgraded. Not only was the museum a wonderful thing, but the name of the museum was a powerful political challenge. Nowadays, Jewish leaders would never accept being referred to as living in exile. We are not in Galut, we are in diaspora. Diaspora means, a widespread community. 3 years after the State of Israel was founded, there was a sit-down between David Ben-Gurion and the head of the American Jewish Committee. You may remember that the American Jewish Committee in its origin was German Jewish, strongly German Jewish, openly, overtly, proudly German Jewish. Later, the American Jewish Congress was established to give Eastern European Jews a place at the table. The American Jewish Congress was established as the non-German Jewish organizing team. The head of the American Jewish Committee and the German Jewish community in America in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s was extremely liberal, to the point that many German Jews wanted nothing to do with the state of Israel. Nothing. And Ben-Gurion and the head of the American Jewish Committee literally reached a concordat that Israel would stop trying to govern Galut Jewry, and in return, the American Jewish Committee, representing the vast wealth, the big power in America at the time, would move toward considering supporting aspects of the Jewish state. Can you believe that that was actually something they sat down and argued and haggled and reached a concordat? Fascinating. So right from the beginning, the relationship between Israel and the Jews of the diaspora was fraught. That argument, Steve, is still going on today. And the argument is there a way to create a mechanism so that the Jews of the diaspora could have a say, not a vote, but a say in some of the big decisions regarding Israel outside of defense? No one thinks that the diaspora world has any right to say anything about how Israel handles its defense. But everything else could be, should be, would be on the table. During the presidency of Shimon Peres established the annual presidential conference for world Jewish leaders. He actually did it. I attended a couple of them. It was a very heady experience. Lest you don't understand, no, I was not invited to address it. Okay? But at least they let me in the door. And I mean, that's where I first saw Mark Zuckerberg and a whole bunch of other people. They came and they talked about issues of common concern. The moment Peres's term ended, so did that conference. Risa.
I think it's important to point out that Reform Judaism came from that German community, and they absorbed that non-Zionist center. And that's why the Reform movement today is still titled with "You're not real Zionists." And the problem is that I had an experience speaking to the board of the
Something froze?
union.
We froze?
Did
we freeze? Okay, we
You are
froze,
okay.
Risa. So you said you had an experience and then it stopped. Go ahead.
Oh, I had an experience speaking to a lot of members of the board of the URJ. And I was talking about Israel as a core part of our identity. And I was attacked by them. That it's still true today that there is a core group of leadership of the Reform movement that I cannot call interested in Israel. Let me put it that way. I won't say they're non-Zionist, but that's what I think they are. And it's in the DNA of the Reform movement, and we are still fighting it today. We can't get Israel as a pillar of Reform Judaism to be important. And it's all from this history, I think.
Your point is 100% accurate. And the battle goes on. The Reform movement in its founding platforms openly and in writing opposed the creation of a Jewish state. And our enemies have never let us forget that. I was responsible for the Reform movement adopting the Reform Zionist platform. It was the first document in which the Central Conference of American Rabbis unanimously adopted a pro-Zionist position.
And that platform is ignored
Yes,
by
it is.
leadership today. And even at HUC, when they teach platforms, they do not teach the Zionist platform because there's a real problem with the rabbinic students.
I attended a class. Why do you remind me of my pain? You're not supposed to do that to me. I attended a class at the Hebrew College in Jerusalem taught by the greatest current scholar of American Reform Judaism. And I was sitting in there just because I'm a nuisance and I love to sit there with the students. And he was teaching the platforms of Reform Judaism, Pittsburgh platform, Columbus platform, the platforms. He did not teach the Reform Zionist platform. And when I shyly but angrily thrust my hand into the air and said, by the way, and the professor's a friend, he's still a friend, he's great. By the way, there's another platform you're not even mentioning. Why? The students loved that because they didn't have to take notes while we argued the rest of the hour. But yes, Reform Judaism in its origins was against the establishment of a Jewish state. The Columbus platform in 33. The Columbus platform made room for the possibility of a Jewish state in response to the growth of Nazism in Germany. That was the first and only thing which pushed Reform leaders into thinking maybe we need an escape hatch. And that became their Zionism. Okay, thank you, folks. Okay, now, what's going on in the world? What's going on in the world? Okay, coalition negotiations. Some things now have actually been locked down. And as I said at the beginning, lockdown means they are in signed documents. My party will join Likud and support Bibi. These are the agreements we have reached. Okay? That's what I mean by lockdown. Number one, please, since I'm feeling miserable, feel comfortable joining me. Okay. The new government has not been sworn in yet. But in a sideways move, the parties supporting Bibi, constituting a majority of the future Knesset, not of the present, agreed to force the Speaker of the Knesset to resign and to have another Speaker temporarily appointed. Why is that important? I'll tell you. Thank you for asking. So that laws can be amended so as to make the terms of the coalition agreement legal. Let's put it differently. As the coalition agreement is being signed piece by piece, a number of the things which Likud and Bibi are agreeing to are not permitted by Israeli law. So, are you feeling good? So, a temporary speaker has been appointed who is jamming through the Knesset the items that the coalition partners need in order for a government to form. Is that important? Let me give you an example. Susie wanted examples before. I'll give you an example. The head of the Shas party, the ultra-Orthodox Sephardic party, is a gentleman by the name of Aryeh Deri. He has been head of that party for ever and ever and ever and ever. He was convicted of fraud. I mean, I'd hate to be picky, but he was convicted of fraud. In the coalition agreement, he is going to become a minister of 2 departments in the new Israeli government. But you can't be a minister if you've been convicted of fraud, according to the law.
For real.
So the new reading will be, since Deri received a suspended sentence, it's not really the same as a conviction, and therefore he can serve. Steve, don't you shake your head at me.
Sounds familiar.
That's legal nonsense.
Okay, so they've put in an acting speaker who will not be speaker when the new government takes place, to shepherd through the Knesset changes in Israeli law, which will make the coalition agreements legal. Okay, I mean, why should we care about that? Or, remember, you heard it here. Do you remember when I said to you, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, and you made ugly faces because you'd never heard of them, and Smotrich is a weird name, and all that? Guess what? I am so right, I feel great. Why? Ben Gvir is taking over this Kahanist, the follower of Meir Kahana. He is taking over all of the police force in Israel in the coalition agreements. He demanded more power over all of the police, local and national, in Israel before he would sign his party into the coalition. So this ultra right-wing supporter of violence against Arabs is being given in these days in the Knesset with a new speaker, is being given more power. Okay, I mean, you don't think that's really important, but it is. Smotrich, oh, that's the other guy, right? And Smotrich knew, as part of the coalition agreement, he wanted control of the West Bank. Specifically, he wants to increase settlements and strengthen the Jewish presence so as to make it absolutely impossible for there ever to be a two-state solution.
Oh my God.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's appropriate. Now, that push was agreed to, but Smotrich said it's not enough. What has basically transpired in the coalition agreement that are now being signed, not just campaign stuff, right? Is that basically Smotrich is being named something like Prime Minister of the West Bank. He is being given great power. he wants to annex the West Bank to Israel. And he is being given major power. Okay, we're going to stop, even though we're moving here. Risa, you have a question? And okay, after, then we'll go to Harv. Yeah.
Sorry, I never lowered my hand.
Oh, okay. Harv?
Yeah, what's going to happen with the Abraham Accords? Have any idea? Certainly the countries that signed on to it are not going to be happy about any of this.
Not necessarily. A number of the countries who signed the Abraham Accords are much more interested in containing Iran than in caring about the Palestinians. They will know, they have sold Palestinian interests in the name of containing, limiting, whatever it is, Iran. As a matter of fact, Bibi has publicly endorsed expanding the Abraham Accords and wants to bring Saudi Arabia in. I
Well-
mentioned 2 weeks ago
Good.
that that Biden has signaled his disinterest in the Abraham Accords, because Biden has an abiding concern for establishing safer relationships with Iran.
But Iran is funneling arms to Russia.
Yeah,
What's your point?
The point is that if the Israelis want to have this good relationship based on the Abraham Accords, they're going to have to stand up to Russia.
And
Eventually.
I agree with you. They have not done so yet, and it's a source of great embarrassment that the state of Israel is not shipping some of its ultra-great missile systems to the Ukrainians. There's no question.
I agree with that.
No question that they're under pressure for that. So now you're looking at a scene in which Bibi will come into office, probably will come into office with a desire to expand the Abraham Accords and to allow ministers to play with the possibility of annexing the West Bank over against an American president who he's clearly supportive of Israel. Please hear me, clearly supportive of Israel.
Mhm.
But on the issue of the Abraham Accords and on the West Bank issues and on a U.S. embassy in East Jerusalem for the Palestinians, in all that, Biden is absolutely standing on the opposite side of the room from Bibi. Now, since Bibi's not prime minister yet, they're not fighting yet. But you can expect that relationships between Israel and the administration, given all of this, it's going to be very bad. Okay, I want to move quickly. I see Donna. Where are you? You keep jumping around.
Donna, me or Donna? I'm Donna. Okay. I don't think that the relationships with Israel are going to be so bad, because I think God's going to send me to the Middle East with the president one day, and I know what to do with my piano, and I can bring things. It's like the King David before Saul. Things are going to change, Rabbi. Just have faith. It's going to be okay.
Okay, I mean, yes, that is certainly a live option. Risa, then Steve.
I have a question. How many Russian voices are in the Knesset today, what parties are the Russians supporting? And do they have a voice? Is that part of what's going on?
You know, you're talking about the issue of Israel and Russia and the Ukraine, okay, as a separate item.
Yes,
Lieberman, Lieberman is the head of the major Russian party. And they follow him, and he has his supporters in the Knesset. But
Excuse me, Robert, what's his name?
please hold, what we call Russians are not Russians. Some of them are, many are Ukrainians. And when they came to Israel, they came as Russians. And now there is real stress between, I don't want to say it this way, the Russians and the Ukrainians who came as Russians. And so, Risa, there's stress there. And therefore, there are more than 1 million who came, right? That would
Right.
represent quite a voting bloc, but they are not one. Because in fact, the Russians and the Ukrainian Russians, and they have very different views. But Lieberman's party is the party. Steve?
I know I mentioned this to you individually, but I think everybody should be aware. Last week on Meet the Press, addressing the American audience, Bibi very clearly said a number of the things which you said are now set in these coalition agreements, he would not allow to happen. And I think it's very scary if he actually wants to maintain a relationship with the American Jewish community and is willing to actually lie, or maybe he thinks he has more power than he does.
Thank you, Steve. Opening up a really important point, and that is that Bibi is weak. In order to build the coalition he needs, he is selling everything but his wife, Sarah. And if they ask for Sarah, he might sell her too. He is the ultra-Orthodox. This is not signed yet, are demanding that the Women of the Wall activity and the pluralistic space at the wall, away from the Kotel area, but still at the wall, that those be shut down. And they are also demanding that the thing that could explode this whole deal is that change in the law of return. We've mentioned it here before. And I mentioned it deals with grandchildren of one grandparent was Jewish. And the use of that as a definition of who can come to Israel under the law of return if you have one Jewish grandparent. The ultra-Orthodox are demanding that be changed. And that's where the diaspora world is going to go ape if that happens. Even though, we're talking about it, it's kind of like doesn't touch us, isn't it? But in terms of how people feel, keep your dirty hands off the law of return. And they're not going to. They're not going to. Merle.
So we don't yet know how this is going to affect the Reform community, whereas I'm saying with HUC, kibbutzim, etc. How does this affect our nifty trips to Israel, where we may not know the history of these kids or our staff that goes, their genealogy. And how does this affect, as well as our URJ camps and private camps, how does that affect their trips and sending staff and kids to camp every summer? I mean, kids from camp at a certain age, Risa knows what I'm saying, to Israel every summer.
Okay, first of all, they would have nothing to say about that. That the URJ wants to will send youth missions to Israel is not the issue. The issue, Merle,
Good.
is an internal Reform Jewish issue. When Risa and I were leading youth missions to Israel, what did we do? 7? How many we do? I forget. My brain has been fried by being out in the desert too long.
I did 8,
Huh? 8?
had 8 trips.
8 trips, okay. We were part of a team that brought 1,400 Reformed kids to Israel.
That's where I'm concerned is
Wait,
any of, okay,
today, without government changes, forget that, 500, 600 at best. That's on us. Now,
right,
I know that Wilshire right now has a group of kids. David Eschel is there right this moment in Israel,
Right.
with a group of kids. That's terrific. But I am saying that the problem threatening the Israel trips for teens is internal. It's us.
so it's our fear of sending the kids.
Why
Basically,
are our kids more frightened than the Orthodox and conservative kids?
shouldn't be.
Accept that frightened. I'm going to go back to what Risa said. The depth of Zionist commitment in the reform movement is deeply suspect. Now, I want you to be aware, don't tell anybody, but a rump group of people, old line Zionists in the reform movement, have coalesced in partnership with the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism to open up a pipeline of support which no longer considers the URJ relevant. You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying, Merle?
Yes,
We are going to establish, if it works, a means of funneling money to support liberal Judaism, may I say, especially now, that doesn't rely upon the union to be a major source of support.
is that where our ARTSA money goes? And ARTSA memberships, etc.?
I would ask you not to ask me that question because it gives me heartburn.
Bless your heart.
Okay?
As so many of us have heartburn from it.
Took over ARTSA. It no longer is independent. And from my perspective, membership in ARTSA is significantly down. Thus, monies that would come through ARTSA membership, not available. And I will only say this, only to this group and the 10,000 people watching it on live stream, that I am a member of the 5-person steering committee trying to do this. Okay? And we have our next meeting coming up next week, and it's now, I should also mention that Shoshana is one of the 5 people, and the other 3 are top line Zionist leaders within the reform movement.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Are you aware of the NIFTY office in Israel? It doesn't exist anymore.
Right, I get that.
The NIFTY office in Israel is gone. Let me just, because we're having such a good day. And
It's disturbing.
It is.
Disturbing? Wait,
Well,
Wait.
I'm
Wait.
being polite.
wait. The
I don't
latest,
know everyone in the group. I'm safe with you.
the
Oh,
latest,
bless you, Merle.
the latest demand by the ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism faction is we will support the government when it confronts or presents the next budget, when Bibi's government presents its first budget. And remember, without some of these bigger small parties, Bibi does not have a majority.
Right.
United Torah Judaism has said, we will support the government's budget proposal if the government totally exempts all Orthodox men from serving in the army.
Kelly, why hasn't the government been sworn in? And isn't that good for us?
Why do you say good for us as if we are a clutch of people in some cellar plotting the overthrow? Which would not be a bad idea, but Bibi has used up all of the time allocated to him by law to form a government. He was then entitled to a 2-week extension, which can be granted only by Herzog, the president of Israel. Herzog granted Bibi 10 days. That was a slack. He granted him 10 days. We are in the 10 days now, which is why I made the comment that these agreements, these demands, these election platforms are now being put into writing. If they reach the end of the time and Bibi cannot come before the president and declare that I have a government of 61, whatever it is, I have a governing coalition, then the president is authorized to go to another candidate to
I
create
knew it.
a government. Good news, there is no one. In other words, if Bibi doesn't get this atrocious, racist, right-wing, did I say that? I am. Government in place,
Hopefully not.
then Israel goes to elections again.
Good. Let's pray
Now,
that goes through.
I just want to end because we are at the end. I have a lot of stuff which obviously we didn't get to. I want to end by quoting Eric Yaffe, who just published a document. And Eric Yaffe, past chair of the URJ, past head of ARTSA, a profoundly committed Zionist, an actively committed Zionist, said the following. First of all, we have to tell the truth to ourselves that this is a government that promotes racist, hate-filled, divisive, and vindictive views of politics and of Judaism. That's from the past chair of the URJ. I want you to hear this. Number two, we must show no deference to those who enable or legitimize those voices. They are liars, and we have to confront them with the truths and values of authentic Judaism. As to anti-Arab racism, it is anti-Jewish. Okay?
Right
In some way, Rebecca, I wanted you to hear that. That the former head of the Reform movement says that this stuff is anti-Jewish. It's the worst he could say. Next,
Right.
we should ask the United States government to deny Ben-Gvir a visa if he attempts to visit the United States.
Tell
We
his name,
demand, please
sorry.
quiet. We should demand that the United States not give Ben-Gvir a visa. Next, American Jews must refuse to meet with Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, or this Maoz guy who is the LGBT enemy. If they come to the United States, we must not be present. This is Eric Yaffe. He's hoping that Homeland Security will bar Ben-Gvir. Next, we should provide, and here is us, we should provide financial support to Israeli civil society, education, cultural groups that directly impact Israel's political process. That's what I will be trying to do with this funding for the IMPJ. And if we get started, you know I'm going to tell you about it and ask for your support. You know that. With political extremism on the rise in Israel, we need more American Jews be directly involved in the political process. Use our dollars to strengthen centrist politics in Israel, politics that most American Jews, in fact, support. Promote social justice, realism on security, commitment to Jewish values. And his last comment, with this I close. We must make it absolutely unequivocally clear that an Israel beset by extremism will not receive less of our time and attention, but more. May I repeat that? Make it absolutely clear that an Israel beset by extremism will not receive less of our time and attention, but more. We will not despair and we will not drift away. He closes. I quote, "There must be an Israel. Without Israel, we are a truncated, incomplete people. At the time of distress, we must come together with our Israeli brothers and sisters and find a way out." Eric Yaffe.
I like that man.
Love you guys. Thank you very much.
May I ask you a question, Rabbi, please? You need help with fundraising. You need to let me know that I play a mean piano.
Okay, we'll do that.
I'm serious.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Hi, Cindy. You didn't say anything today.
Go, go. I want you to go.
Bye.
Yes,
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good week.
Bye, Merle.
You too.
Bye,
Bye.
Cindy. Bye. Bye, Risa. Bye, everybody. Bye. Take care. Shalom.
As big as her body, her whole body. She is loving, caring. Laugh with her. Stanley does a pretty good job. Keep quiet. Not all the teachers do, but it's